Whether in person or online, design clinics are an amazing way to efficiently address a challenge through mobilizing the collective wisdom of a group. We hope watching this recording of an online design clinic will boost your confidence in trying out the process online. The participants in this design clinic are planning an online STEM education workshop. The committee plans to use design clinics in the online conference and wanted to record this one as a demonstration. So the way that I would do it is say, okay, Emily's going to be our next question asker, and I'll get the timer started. And Emily's going to ask her question in the form, could you help me? And then provide us a little bit of context in under 2 minutes.
The question is, could you help me with ideas for an online conference that provides opportunities for networking and knowledge sharing? And the context of this question is that we are planning our June Next Gen conference/retreat as an online experience for our participants. And we have, at least I'll speak for myself, I've never done such a thing before. And so I would like to make sure this experience affords interactions that are meaningful.
Okay, so the next step is where we ask her to share more about. So share more about is helping us get a sense of the broader context that this question sits in, the ideas that are already bumping around, who's involved in the process. So we'll do 6 minutes of share more about.
I first want to hear more about what are the goals of this workshop, even before it went non-live Zoom meeting.
Our main goal was to help the work of the implementation teams move forward by providing them with supported work experiences that would give them enough time, but also enough structure and support from the various working groups and implementation teams in order to move their project forward.
Could you share more about why you would want to go to this conference, Emily?
I personally want to go to this conference in order to help support the implementation teams that we have at Western Washington University further their own goals towards some of the program design things that they're working on, but with the support of different people that are in the room, the virtual room, I guess, so that we would get input and feedback that we wouldn't necessarily be able to get in as coherent as a fashion if we were all working separately. And in order to learn about what the other different implementation teams are doing. And
Hi, this is Miley. Can you share more about what type of networking experience you would have ideally liked if it was an in-person event?
I think that some way of knowing what the different groups are up to and have produced, and then a way of choosing interactions with the groups that have been doing work that I feel would most support our work if we were to share with each other. So somewhat like a jigsaw or maybe roundtables.
Can you share more about really wonderful favorite networking experiences you've had in the past at other professional gatherings?
Being an introvert, I very much dislike unstructured networking. So I like it when there is a structure provided where I'm assigned a group, or I can choose a group based on certain information and that there's a plan for what happens in that group discussion. That's not so stringent that we can't do the type of question asking that needs to happen, but that is at least structured well enough to keep the conversation within certain bounds.
Okay, and we're at 6 minutes. Emily, is there anything else that you'd like to share before you get the privilege of silence for the next 2 steps?
No, just that those were really insightful, thoughtful questions that really made me think, so thank you.
Okay, great job, everyone. So the next step is where we talk about what this question makes us think of. And my colleague Laurel Hammond will always say, take off your regular hat, the hat you've been wearing all day, maybe your normal professional hat, and think of all the other hats that you wear in your life as a grandparent or as a neighbor or as a cook or as an athlete. And we're doing that purposefully to make it so we don't jump right into advice giving, and try to make sure your sharing is as concise as it can be so we hear a whole bunch. over the 6 minutes that we do this.
This reminds me of a time when I was teaching and I had a 3-hour class and the video service went out that evening right before my class, and an hour of my class was going to be related to video. And I had to think of something really quickly.
I will say that it makes me think of a meeting I was at today with 15 co-directors of the UTeach program across the country. And that is focusing on starting up some working groups to work on basically the same questions and have the same thought is how are we using the core principles of improving STEM education to drive our work in the current pandemic?
Yeah, that makes me think about when I was working on building the learning standards for the state of Washington, and we had teams of teachers in 8 content areas, and we had people all over the state, and we would come together periodically. When we began our meetings, when we had the FaceTime, even though this is virtual FaceTime, it's still more FaceTime. How do we start and how do we get refocused without losing our deeper purpose that we were there for? And how are we going to come out with a product at the end?
This makes me think of when I was part of the laser faculty and we would plan the summer institutes, and you would get people with all kinds of different roles coming together to try to plan a week-long institute for people who had similar roles and also different positions within that. So real mixed teams and people who weren't educators and people who were. And how do you facilitate networking across those teams as well as within the teams when the teams didn't always know each other well?
It makes me think of being a new person going to the Unitarian Fellowship in State College, Pennsylvania, and how there was a couple that had volunteered to be the one that made friends with you right away, and then they chatted you up and learned what you were interested in, and then they passed you off to somebody that had a shared interest.
This makes me think of when they first invented an electric engine at first, but then the internal combustion engine, and they stuck the engine on horse carriages instead of designing a car that was appropriate for the engine that they had. I feel like we're trying to stick an engine onto a horse carriage.
This reminds me of sort of the first online experience I had where it was basically an in-person 3-hour lecture just put online. And right now, as I'm going through the design of my course for this summer online, I have to keep reminding myself of what the goal of the course is and what the tools are available to me, and not rely on what I have done previously because it's a whole different set of interactions.
That makes me think of Roxanne's comment and Jose's of the SAMR model that you're aware of, and there's other models about the use of technologies. We don't want to just use technology because we have it, right? So because we're on Zoom for this workshop, it makes me think about what are ways that we can actually leverage that to enhance the workshop.
So now we're at the You Might Try stage where we're pointing out possible paths forward. And the important thing with You Might Tries is try to be concise, try to say one thing, and try to get a whole bunch of You Might Tries. We do have the Google Doc so people could write their answers in and or say one or say several.
So you might try stealing a workshop model for online conferences from someone else. I just don't know who that is.
So we might try mini Zooms with our teams, like going from the big group to implementation Zoom, smaller sessions, and we might be even able to be together in some cases doing that.
That just made me think of something we might try. People who are in proximity might try to be in the same space, but be socially distanced. So we might try doing some outside meeting where we're 6 feet apart wearing masks and having a little bit of face-to-face time.
You might try assigning people to small groups that all are in different work groups, but that you're going to give them time to reflect with each other about the conference experience.
This is Miley. I went to a 3-hour online session, and one of the things that they did there that you might try is the knowledge sharing. The content was at most 10 minutes, and then it broke into 20-minute small groups of no more than 5 people where they discussed the topic. And then the small group, you had to identify someone who would share out, and then after 20 minutes, the breakout rooms automatically closed. We came back to large group and had 5 to 10 minutes of just sharing what was discussed in the small group. So it was this really lovely balance of knowledge sharing, networking around a topic, and then large group digestion and processing.
One thing we might try is having implementation teams come prepared with 1 or 2 questions, though, that we want to work on, and have it worked up in a Google Doc like this, so we could do something like what we're talking about here.
You might try having people before the conference offer their expertise about something, to say if someone wants to talk with me about X, they'd be welcome to do that, and then give people contact information.
So you might try kind of those in between conversations, like it's like some informal coffee talk.
Then along with that, you might try using some digital platforms to brainstorm or have that sideline back channel kind of mingling.
I might try other tools besides Zoom. I don't know what those are right now. I have some things I've been using, but we just might try doing something different than all Zoom all the time.
You might try having meals shared in some way, meals with a prompt that's a relevant topic, but it's not one that people are going to talk about in the meat of the workshop, but that it's maybe more of them reflecting on their work as an educator.
You might try having wine with those meals too.
You brought up another, you may try that I heard someone do. They actually delivered lunch to participants, or a snack or something like that. So it helps facilitate the thing.
Okay, and we got to 6 minutes. Great job, everybody. We got lots of ideas shared. And now it's time for, in 2 minutes or less, Emily to share what struck her from the conversation. And in this stage, I suggest to people that they don't have to summarize the conversation. They don't have to say which ideas they liked or they didn't like. They can just say, this is something I'm thinking about, or this is something I hope we can talk about more. So it's just to make sure the presenter gets the last word also, because they've been sitting there silently for a while. So Emily, what struck you from the conversation?
What struck me was, first of all, how this problem that we're trying to design around is not new in a lot of respects, that there have been other situations that people have gone through that have required a quick pivot, and it's not necessarily unique to a technology kind of driven approach either. There's a lot more to think about than just the technology. Also, what struck me was how many types of variations there could be in how to meet and what to meet about, and how to possibly facilitate that. It was also hard to stay silent. But I see the necessity of doing that, because I wanted to keep saying, oh, that's a great idea. I really like that. Oh yeah, that really is, like that resonates with me, things like that. I also have some thoughts that are more meta about this process itself. This seems to afford a very nice way of a lot of quick brainstorming around a problem. That's I found very useful. And I'll look forward to reviewing the notes from this section. I think it really could help us to design the conference. Also, what struck me is how much knowledge is in the room and how much experience is in the room. I'm feeling inspired by that and supported by that.